How's that for a welcome? Preemptive, radical welcome before I even knew there was such a word for it. 25 years ago this fall, I was teaching religion at Cathedral High School in the south end of Boston. Across the street from my school, Cardinal Bernard Law was getting ready to deal with the sex abuse crisis in the church. And I was digging into my schedule of classes. I mostly taught New Testament to sophomores. And really, the heaviest part I had was 3 sections of ethics with juniors. But my first couple years there, as I did 25 years ago, I had 1 section of freshman religion. And given that the student body was in complete diversity, 96% students of color, spoke 28 different first languages at home. Virtually all of them, 99%, were the first or second generation to live in the United States. We had Catholics and various Protestant Christians, especially from Black churches in Boston. We had some Jewish students. We had Buddhist students who came from Southeast Asia. We even had a couple of Muslim students. And the freshman year curriculum was world religions. So as the fall went on, we started with the Abrahamic traditions. Our first unit was Judaism, then Christianity, then we hit Islam. And for the unit on Islam, I called around to try and see if I could take my class to a mosque in the Boston area. And I got a positive response from the Islamic Society of Boston Center in Cambridge, Massachusetts, just a little ways out of Central Square. And I started talking to them about how to bring my class over there for a tour of the facility and a little bit of an intro to Islam from practicing Muslims. And I told them there were some conditions on our visit. I had to either leave early, and they said, well, you won't be with us very long if you come all the way over on the subway and you have to get back for a certain time to get back for lunch. So we would have either had to return to the school for lunch, or we would have had to bring lunch with us, or I would have had to stop and get everybody lunch while we were out, because we had to provide lunch every day. So the center said, we'll take care of lunch for you so you can visit with us longer. And they must have heard the story about the ice cream sundae party, because then they asked me, what do your kids like to eat? And they're freshmen in high school. They like pizza and French fries and Doritos. Okay, we'll see what we can do, they said. And on the appointed day, this was just after Thanksgiving sometime. I don't remember exactly when, but right after the Thanksgiving break, we were back at school, and we got on the subway a little bundled up and took the T, and we got out of the Red Line in Central Square, and we walked everybody down, and I gave my famous, line about, you only have to keep track of me. If you lose me, you're in trouble. And we walked through Cambridge, and we got to the center, and we were welcomed so graciously. We were given a talk by a young college student who is a Muslim on the basic pillars of Islam. We got a tour. We had an introduction to the Quran by another young person, most likely, I think, a college student. They didn't say. And then we were invited to, in a sense, a social hall for lunch. We went down to the social hall, and it was laid out in a way you would not imagine. There were delicacies from the Middle East and Turkey and Pakistan and Indonesia, all the places where people in the community had ethnic and cultural ties. Looked like 24 different kinds of rice dishes to me, cookies, almonds, dates. baklava, some of the best hummus I've still yet had in my life, all kinds of stuff. In addition, there was a table that had lined up in neat little rows individual small servings of McDonald's French fries, bowls of Doritos and potato chips, homemade and store-bought cookies, a stack of, we know how youth group works, pizza boxes from the local pizzeria, and cheese and pepperoni and veggie. There were 24 plus students in my class and me and another chaperone. There was food for 6 times our numbers laid out in front of us, with water and iced tea and Coke and Diet Coke and lemonade and you name it. And we're eating. And my students who had behaved very well so far, I give them credit, lost it at the French fries, pizza, and Doritos. But as one of our hosts said to me, they're teenagers, they're fine. And I am munching on the most delectable date and almond cookie when it occurs to me not one of our hosts is eating lunch with us. And then it hits me like, no kidding, they're not eating. It's Ramadan. And let me tell you how intelligent I felt as the world religions teacher teaching a unit on Islam who totally missed the fact that it was Ramadan. Yeah, not one of the brightest moments of my life. And one of our hosts noticed my crestfallen face, and I was about to cry. I'm like, oh, I screwed this up. And she comes over to me and she says, don't worry about it. Yeah, it's Ramadan. You're not Muslim. You're not fasting. Neither are your students. We're happy to provide lunch so you could stay with us longer. How's that for a welcome? Preemptive, radical welcome before I even knew there was such a word for it. Unbelievable. It gave me a lesson in hospitality and welcoming, as you can see, I will never forget. And it also taught me a lesson to be more aware of how welcoming I am in return. How did I miss it was Ramadan? I still don't know. Think for a moment to yourself. When was a time in your life you felt the most welcome? What was it like? And did you expect it? Our theme for this month is deep listening. And welcoming and hospitality requires a deep listening on part of the host, but also on the part of the guest, because it's a reciprocal relationship. I had a conversation with our host at the Islamic Center Society, and I missed hearing what they were saying. I wonder still if they'd even mentioned it was Ramadan when I set up the visit. I hadn't listened deeply enough to my conversation partner, but they had listened very deeply to me. They had all the foods I told them the kids like. They arranged everything for the kids. I said, one of the things I do in teaching is I give them tokens and prizes and lots of different stuff. They heard that. Each one of us had a gift bag, which included, and I wonder how much this cost them to this day, a paperback copy of the Quran in Arabic and English. I still got mine. They heard me. They saw me. And it reminded me to do the same because I missed it a little bit in that experience. This morning, we begin a 6-month continuing education journey related to our being a welcoming congregation. And this congregation has been a welcoming congregation for a long time. This is something that's become a part of who we are. And as part of who we are, one of the things we should be doing with this is ongoing learning and ongoing education, because it really is one of those things where you don't check off a box and you're done forever. It evolves. Our first lesson in how things evolve come from the name of the course we're going to be doing, Trans Inclusion in Congregations. Back when the welcoming congregation was new, the T in LGBTQ was in there, but it wasn't emphasized. It certainly wasn't where I did the welcoming congregation first as a minister. I'm going to guess it probably wasn't really emphasized when you did it at that time. The IA plus wasn't even on the end of it yet. So there's an expansion to what we might need to learn about to be welcoming and practice welcoming. And the second lesson, even in the title, is trans inclusion. The word inclusion points to a bit of a shortcoming in the term welcoming. All kinds of folks and organizations and groups and religions will say they are welcoming. I can guarantee you there are churches around the country having services this morning who will proudly profess all are welcome. And then when all the welcome people are sitting there, we'll then go on to tell some of the welcome people how inferior, horrible, and worthless they are and that they're going to hell. That's not welcoming. So the addition to welcoming is inclusion. We have called our program of inclusion Welcoming Congregation in Unitarian Universalism. But this same type of program has other names in other religious traditions. Our Christian cousins in the United Church of Christ call their program Open and Affirming. Not only are they welcoming, they strive to be open to everybody and affirming of who everyone is. That's a step up from just welcoming, right? And welcoming is a step up from just tolerance. We don't want to be just tolerant. Tolerance is the lowest common denominator. Like, you don't get a lot of points for tolerance. Tolerance in ethics means I'll let it go even though I don't like it. So seeking to be tolerant is not where we want to seek to be. Welcoming is better. Inviting is better. Open and inclusive is better still. And affirming is better still. So as we go through this program, we want to take all these steps: welcoming, open, affirming, inviting, inclusive. The Reformed Judaism calls their program Keshet, and if you know Hebrew, rainbow. That's a great word, right? Rainbow. Getting all the different things and all the colors in there. So part of our learning this year is just to start off with saying that not only are we going to learn to be more welcoming, we're going to learn to be more inviting, more open, more affirming, and more inclusive. And that in itself will increase the power and strength, comfort, and safety of our being a welcoming congregation. On the surface, being welcoming seems easy enough. You think of hospitality, you think of being kind and friendly and generous and accepting, and looking after the well-being and safety of guests. But for people to be truly welcomed and at home, we want to move past treating people just as guests. To be really open and affirming as well as welcoming, we want to strive to make everyone who comes in feel like they can be as deeply embedded, deeply connected in relationship as anyone else who's already here or who follows after them. In the reading this morning, Richard Kearney points out that philosophically, there are two really big differences of approach in the ethics of hospitality and welcoming. One is unconditional, without regard to anything about the other. You invite them in, you welcome them. The other is conditional welcoming. Are there any conditions we can put on our welcome? And as we explore our ability to be open and affirming and welcoming and inviting and inclusive, one of the things we have to watch is we have to make sure that everyone who's welcome and affirmed and included here is also safe. Which means we do have to put up a little bit of hesitancy on who we welcome and how they think and behave. All people are welcome. All attitudes and behaviors are not. We cannot be a true welcoming, open, and affirming congregation if we welcome hateful attitudes and violence. We already have a little bit of conditions on our welcome. There's a sign on our door that says you can't bring weapons in here. And it has to be there because under Connecticut law, there is no specific law outlawing guns and such in a hospital or a school or a place of worship unless it's posted. So part of our goal is to get as close as we possibly can to that pure radical welcome, accepting people as they are, but conditioning their welcome and their remaining welcome on attitude, speech, behavior. Because it really has to be okay to be intolerant of intolerance. Some things are not a matter of opinion. They are a matter of ethics and morality. A basic level of human rights and human dignity is non-negotiable. It must be. If we allow dehumanization, making the other for any reason less than human, it makes it easier to treat people in ways we would never treat people we consider to be like us. Dehumanization is the ground of genocide and war and violence. And we need to have a little bit of a safety barrier watching out for that. Now, I do not think we need ramparts and armed sentries and word police, but we do need to understand that radical and preemptive radical hospitality, making the ground safe for everybody to show up and have the kind of ice cream they need, means everyone should be able to have that. And that means we can't allow hateful language and hateful action. And that's okay. And our goal this year is to get as close to that true, radical, absolute hospitality as we possibly can. And we're going to fall short. But we're going to get closer than we are now. And later on, we'll get closer than that. That's how the education thing works. And this is an educational program. And approaching this from an educational angle is important. Because when we look at all the things in the world that we care about and value, and all the things that we don't value because they're hurtful and harmful, one of the things we have to remember is we never see the world as it is. We see things as we are. And to become more welcoming and open and inclusive, we educate ourselves to make ourselves more opening and welcoming and inviting and inclusive. And if I do that, and you do that, and you do that, and you do that, and we all do that here, all of a sudden there's a group, we've just gotten more open and welcoming, inviting, and inclusive. Because how we see the world has just opened yet a little wider, a little more broadly, a little more inclusive. And no matter where we are on that, we can always get a little better. Something we want to note, and I use the word we a lot this morning, is we constitute a wide range of human beings in this congregation. Some of us have greater experience with the issues we're going to be talking about for personal reasons because of who they are. or who's in their family, or who they love, or who their friend is, than others do. So when I say we as a congregation, I mean what we all have to do together wherever we are on that spectrum of learning and understanding about these things we're going to learn about and understand better. And one of the things we say up front is that we know some of us will know some of this already. We know some of us won't. We know some of us have the experience of being transgender or non-binary. We know some of us don't. And we are all in this journey together, understanding that there are different places in that we for various levels of comfort and comprehension and prior learning. Human beings have evolutionarily built-in defense mechanisms that throw stumbling blocks into being welcoming and inviting and open and inclusive. It's for survival. The more something is like us, we're wired to think it's more safe. May not necessarily be so, but we tend to work that way. The more different someone is than us, we tend to be a little more wary, a little more skeptical. Part of what the educational process will do for all of us is make that part of us a little more understanding and a little less scared of what we don't know, what we're unsure of, what we haven't run across yet. That's just how it works. It is much more difficult to accept somebody and welcome somebody when they're very much unlike us. And so our job is to slowly erase that, to take away those differences by broadening our own understanding, how we see the world. Our welcome may not be perfect. We may never be as open and affirming and inclusive as we think we are or we want to be. But what we commit to on this journey and as a welcoming congregation in general is the willingness to learn more, understand better, and improve our practice as individuals and as a congregation. That's why we became a welcoming congregation. And that's why we're going to learn this year about trans inclusion in the congregation. Because we may never reach the complete, unconditional, true, radical hospitality of being perfectly welcoming, our goal is to move closer and closer to that. The end of the spectrum that makes us more open, more welcoming, more inviting, more inclusive. We live into being a more welcoming congregation, a safer congregation. And perhaps most importantly of all, a more inclusive home and a safer home for our transgender and non-binary siblings. May we all enjoy the journey. Thanks a lot for watching this video. It would help me out a great deal if you liked the video to give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this video with others. Maybe ring that notification bell so you can be informed when we put out other videos like this. Check out my website and blog at tonylorenzen.com for even more resources that will open your mind, touch your heart, and inspire your spirit.